Your mother always said wasting food was a sin. You don't throw away something that's still good, she'd scold, plucking nearly black bananas from your hand before you could drop them in the trash. You mash it, you bake with it, you use it. You grew up with banana bread more often than cake, banana pancakes instead of Saturday waffles, frozen banana chunks in sad smoothies when there wasn't money for much else. By the time you moved into your own place, you were sick of bananas. But they were cheap, so they followed you. A bunch of fives sat on your little counter every week, going from green to yellow to freckled to brown, while you told yourself you'd eat them tomorrow. Then tomorrow turned into lifting the fruit bowl, wrinkling your nose, and shoving the blackened, collapsing shapes into the trash, with a weak promise to do better next time. Next time was always the same. The week everything changed. You bought a fresh bunch on autopilot, barely noticing the cashier sliding them over the scanner. You dropped them into your reusable bag, carried them up 3 flights of stairs, and set them in the same dented metal bowl by the sink. Work was bad. Bills were worse. You stopped looking at the bananas after the 2nd day. By the 5th day, the apartment smelled faintly sweet. You ignored it. By the 7th, you couldn't. The sweetness had thickened, turned heavy and cloying. It seeped into your clothes, into your pillow, into the cheap curtains by the window. You finally grabbed the bunch. They sagged in your hand, peels slick and thin, spots fused together into a near-solid black. One split as you lifted it, pale, mushy flesh bulging out like something trying to escape. "Ugh," you muttered, holding them away from your body. You dumped the bunch straight into the bin, careful not to touch the soft parts. The trash bag bulged slightly, then went still. You pulled the drawstrings closed, knotting them tight, and dragged the bag out to the hallway chute. The metal flap slammed shut with a hollow clang, and the bananas fell away into whatever dark, sour place. The building stored the waste of 100 lives. By the time you got back to your apartment, the sweet smell was already fading. You opened the windows. You lit a candle. You didn't buy bananas the next time you went to the store. That should have been the end of it. The first sign that it wasn't came 3 nights later. You woke up thirsty, throat dry from the stale air of your small bedroom. The clock on your phone read 2:47 a.m. in flat white numbers. You swung your legs over the side of the bed and froze. The apartment smelled sweet, but not like before. Not the lazy, rotten sweetness of overripe fruit. This smell was sharper, almost metallic, sweet like syrup spilled on something it shouldn't touch. You stood, heart picking up speed, and opened your door. The hall light was out. You hadn't turned it off. A thin stripe of orange streetlight squeezed in through the kitchen window, just enough to sketch the edges of the table, the counter, the fruit bowl. The fruit bowl was full. You hadn't bought more. Shapes sat piled in it, long and curved and too many. Some were small, stubby, almost round. Others were stretched nearly twice the length of your hand. All of them were banana. You stepped closer. The smell thickened, coating the back of your tongue. At first, in the dimness, they looked ordinary, yellow, with freckles, a bit too ripe, maybe. But as your eyes adjusted, the details sharpened. The peels didn't quite match. Some were too smooth, stretched tight over something that looked like it wanted to swell. Others were wrinkled in patterns that didn't follow the curve of the fruit, folding in strange, almost jointed segments. And every single one had thin, dark lines etched into the skin. You leaned in. They weren't random. The nearest banana had a face. Two small, ink-black eyes stared up at you. The pigment sunk so deep it looked like the peel itself had bruised that way. A thin, curved line of black marked a mouth, not smiling, just there. You lifted it, fingers trembling. It was warm. You almost dropped it, but some stubborn part of you held on, refusing to be frightened by fruit. You turned it slowly in your hand, looking for marker strokes, for evidence of a stupid prank. The dark lines were too precise, not drawn on top, but under the surface, as if the color had grown there like disease. You set it back very carefully. The other bananas had faces, too. Some looked sleepy, eyes half-lidded. Some looked angry, lines slanted down. One, at the very bottom of the bowl, was different, its features stretched wide, in a grotesque grin, mouth cracked open, so far the peel had split along the curve. The pale flesh beneath was visible in the thin line of the wound. You swallowed against the rising nausea. "Okay," you whispered to the empty room. "Nope," you grabbed the bowl. It was heavier than it looked, heavier than a dozen bananas should be. You carried it to the sink, turned on the garbage disposal, and tipped the whole thing over. The bananas slid out in a slow, disgusting cascade, thudding into the steel basin with fat, soft sounds. Some split, their insides glistening. The faces twisted as they fell, painted expressions warping with each impact. You turned away and slammed your hand on the switch. The disposal roared to life, a grinding, churning growl. The counter vibrated. You didn't look. You didn't want to see the faces turn. You let it run longer than you needed to. When you finally shut it off, the grinding died into a dull, reluctant whine. The smell remained, heavier now. You told yourself it was just the mush in the drain. You washed the bowl twice. You went back to bed. You told yourself you'd call the building manager in the morning, ask if someone had a key, if this was some kind of messed up joke. You fell asleep eventually, heartbeats slowing, thoughts drifting. You dreamt about hands reaching up from dark water, offering you bunches of bananas with faces you recognized but couldn't name. When you woke, sunlight warmed your face. For one blissful second, you forgot. Then the smell hit you. It was worse in daylight. It clung to the walls, to the sheets, to your skin. You could taste it before you even opened your mouth. You sat up slowly. Your bedroom door was half open. On the floor, just inside the doorway, lay a single banana. No bowl, no pile. Just one. Its peel was nearly black, fragile and glossy, stretched tight over whatever lived beneath. Bruises bloomed up the sides in patterns that almost looked like fingerprints. Its face was wrong. The eyes were too big, round and staring, the black pigment spreading out from the pupils like ink dropped in water. The mouth was wide, crooked, pulling up too high on one side. You stared at it. It did not move. You told yourself you were not going to pick it up. You picked it up. The peel yielded strangely under your touch, like the skin of something dead that hadn't gone entirely cold. You gagged and dropped it into your laundry basket, grabbed a t-shirt, and wrapped it around the fruit. Tying the sleeves tight, you carried the bundle at arm's length out of the apartment, down the stairs, and out to the overflowing dumpster behind the building. Flies erupted when you lifted the lid. You held your breath and hurled the wrapped banana inside. The bundle hit something soft and vanished into the pile. You let the lid fall. You backed away. You went to work late, distracted, glancing down at your hands every few minutes, as if expecting them to have turned yellow. By the time you got home, the sweet smell had faded to a faint, sticky ghost. You kept your eyes off the counter, off the sink, off the fruit bowl. You microwaved leftovers. You ate standing up. You washed the plate and left it to dry. You went to bed early, just in case. The dream came harder this time. No hands, no water, just a dark, wet place lit by a pulsing yellow glow. You stood in a tunnel made of something fibrous and soft that yielded when you touched it. The floor was slippery. The walls curved inward, breathing around you. The air was thick with the smell of rot and sugar. You walked because there was nowhere else to go. Shapes dangled from the ceiling, long tapered things hanging in clusters. At first, you thought they were just bananas. Then you saw that each one had a face, eyes closed, mouths sewn shut with stringy, pale fibers. As you passed, some of them stirred, their eyelids fluttered, the threads at their mouths twitched. "You let us rot," a voice whispered. You spun. No one was there. "You threw us away," another voice hissed, closer. The shapes above you trembled. "You wasted us," a chorus breathed, all around. You woke with a strangled sound, sitting bolt upright in bed. Your room was dark, your chest heaved, the smell was gone. For a moment, you hoped it had been nothing more than a nightmare dragged up from years of your mother's guilt. Then you heard it, a soft, wet sound, like something heavy sliding across the kitchen floor. You held your breath. The sound came again, closer. You reached for your phone with shaking hands, thumb fumbling for the flashlight icon. A cold, blue-white beam cut through the darkness. You swung your legs off the bed and pointed the light at the open door. Something pale and curved vanished around the hallway corner, dragging a smear across the floorboards. Your mouth went dry. You stood. You told yourself you should lock the bedroom door. You took a step toward the hall instead. The sweet, metallic smell thickened with each footfall. When you reached the corner, you paused, pressed flat to the wall like a child in a bad movie, and slowly leaned around to see. Your kitchen floor was streaked with yellow, thick, pulpy smears led from the front door to the counter where the fruit bowl sat. The bowl was full again. This time it overflowed. Bananas piled on top of one another, some upright, some slumped, some split open to reveal pale, fibrous insides shot through with threads of black. Faces stared in every direction. Hundreds of eyes, dozens of mouths, some smiling, some gaping, some twisted in expressions you couldn't quite recognize. They were watching you, all at once. The room seemed to tilt. You grabbed the door frame to steady yourself. A sound rose from the bowl. It wasn't words, not at first. More like breathing, in, out, a sizzling, sticky sigh. Then one of the bananas near the front twitched. Its peel cracked down the middle, splitting like lips. You didn't listen. It rasped. The voice was wet, papery, like something speaking through a mouth full of pulp. You shook your head, unable to look away. You never listen, another said, higher, from the back of the bowl. You bite and spit and toss, a third murmured, its mouth barely moving, always grabbing the next, never finishing the last. The voices overlapped, growing, a rising murmur of accusation and disgust. You bruise us, leave us, forget us. We waited in your kitchens, in your lunches, in your hands. You heard your mother's voice in your memory. You don't throw away something that's still good. You'd never thought of bananas as good, just cheap, disposable, replaceable. We fed you, one near the bottom whispered, its face crushed, juice oozing from the corners of its mouth, over and over. We turned ourselves into bread and pancakes and smoothies so you'd look at us, so you'd not waste us. You realized your eyes were burning. Tears blurred the horrible yellow shape. But you still wasted us. They hissed together. The smell was suffocating now. Your lungs felt coated. Your skin felt tacky. We hate waste, a low voice said. For a moment the bowl was silent. Then, from beneath the piled fruit, something moved. The bananas shifted, nudged aside, some tumbling out onto the counter and rolling to the floor. A thick, bulging shape rose from the bottom of the pile, larger than the rest. Your flashlight beam shook as you tried to hold it steady. The thing that emerged had started as bananas, maybe. You saw peels, split and fused. You saw pale, stringy flesh compressed into muscle, layered and pressed until it held a shape. It was roughly the size of a large dog, hunched and glistening, its surface mottled yellow and brown. Dozens of old stems jutted from its back like spines. Its head was a cluster of peels twisted into the suggestion of a skull. Right in the center, a face stared out. Not like the others. This one had features that almost resembled a human's. Eyes set too deep, mouth too wide. The black pigment of its eyes wasn't marker or bruise. They were pits, holes, deep enough that your light couldn't find the bottom. You wasted, it said. Its voice was all the others, layered together. You threw away. You forgot. It slithered off the counter, landing on the floor with a moist slap. A trail of thick yellow slime marked its path. Your legs wouldn't move. It dragged itself closer, the sound of its movement sticky and soft, like hands kneading dough. "We're not going to waste," it whispered. "Not anymore." Your torch beam caught the inside of its mouth as it opened. There was no fruit in there, no soft, harmless mush, just rings of fibrous tissue and rows of dark, seed-like teeth, curving backward. "We learned from you," it breathed. "Use everything. Leave nothing." The smaller bananas wriggled, some bursting their peels as pale, worm-like tendrils pushed free, reaching. They crawled after the bigger mass, leaving streaks of themselves behind. You stumbled back. Your foot slipped in the pulp on the floor. You fell hard, hands shooting out to catch yourself. Your palm landed in something soft and cold. You jerked it back, gagging. The slime clung. Your flashlight clattered away, beams spinning wildly, throwing sickly, distorted shadows across the walls. For a moment, the light caught your own reflection in the dark microwave door. Your eyes were wide, your mouth hung open, and behind you, looming up, the yellow thing reared, its mass blotting out the dim shapes of your tiny home. You tried to crawl. It was faster. It fell on you like something collapsing in slow motion, heavy and suffocating, its weight pressing the air from your lungs. Peels split under your fingers as you shoved at it, revealing pulsing, pale strings that tightened around your wrists. The smell was everywhere. Inside your nose, down your throat. You tried to scream. The sound was weak. "Don't cry," the voices cooed, close to your ear, to your mouth, to your eyes. "You taught us what to do with leftovers." Something soft and fibrous slid across your lips, pressed in. Your last thought, before the sweet, choking dark swallowed everything, was of your mother pulling a bruised banana from your hand and saying, "It's still good, don't waste it." When the building manager came to check on the smell 3 days later, he found your door unlocked. The apartment looked normal enough, if a bit messy, too warm, too sweet. The garbage bin was empty. The sink was clean. On the counter, in a small metal fruit bowl, sat a single, perfect banana, bright yellow, barely freckled. On the peel, in thin, neat black lines, a new face watched the door. The eyes were your shape. The mouth was your shape. When the manager turned away, muttering about mold and kids, these days the banana's mouth curled, just a little, into a wide, patient smile. There was no sense wasting such a good body. It could wait. Someone else would move in. Someone else would buy bananas. And this time, nothing would be thrown away.